about transportation risk and crude oil movement in the Great Lakes Basin.
Good afternoon, everybody. We'll get into this one. How's everyone doing this afternoon? Yeah. You know, we haven't recognized the people who put a lot of hard work yet in pulling this together, and we should give them all a round of applause because the folks. Now there was a clicker up here, I thought, but I'm not sure where it went.
It's behind.
Oh, here.
Oh, no.
Oh, here it is. Good, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to talk about transportation risks in the Great Lakes area. The overview of the presentation is really to spend some time defining risk, modes of transport, impact assessment, risk modeling, and some next steps. We don't want to get into this. We don't want to get into that situation where it's just too late to do our risk analysis. And the risk analyses that we need to do, and Dale said it best when he introduced this session, they need to be transparent, they need to be validated, they need to be based on good data. And frankly, there's a lot of work we need to do as a team and as collaborators to try to build those models. I'm really pleased to see what Jerome presented. I'm going to hopefully complement some of his work, not duplicate it, but I think there's some real interesting connections that we could be making in this area. So quickly, defining risk, we've heard some of this already, so I'll go through quickly some of these early slides. This is actually in a document in your folder. There's a 4-page document, I believe, on definitions of risk, both a qualitative definition and a quantitative definition. And you know, when we talk about risk in the field, we're really looking at two things. We're looking at the likelihood or the probability of an event, and then the severity of its impact. And so in this table, the red area are those areas where there's high severity, a high level of impact, and also a high likelihood. And we really need to understand, in terms of transport of crude or any product, frankly, what those areas are, what those red areas are, because they're unacceptable and we need to manage those risks. Related to crude oil transport, we tend to think of risk in terms of episodic events or maybe chronic leakages, for example, in a pipeline. We tend to think of those as water quality issues or ecosystem issues. We heard about economics and human health as well. But there's a lot of other impacts to be thinking about. Air quality, for example, associated with the transport of crude. Noise, safety, just from operations, not from spills per se. Some of the employment and socioeconomic impacts we already heard about, land use, and importantly, cultural resources. And how do you think about protecting cultural resources, and what are the risks associated with destruction of cultural resources? We know the modes of transport, so I'm just going to fly through these, but train and truck and ship and pipeline, and importantly, transshipment sites where we see the transfer of petroleum, crude or its products from one mode to another. Those are all important things that we have to be thinking about. Here's the message though. The probability of accidents is non-zero, right? We know this. There will be an accident across all modes once we start moving crude through the Great Lakes in modes that we haven't used. And as we know from experience, there have been a number of accidents that we have to think about and manage through. So knowing that the probability is non-zero, we have to start thinking about what the impacts are. Here's a derailment in Pennsylvania from 2015. I'll just show a couple pictures of some major accidents. This is a train derailment in Alabama. This was in 2013. You could see the scale of these things. Here's a truck tanker that spilled in Oklahoma a few years back. Here's a bird in Galveston and an oil tanker that's leaking. This is actually a South Korean oil tanker that's leaking. I mean, these things are going to happen, and they're going to keep happening, and we need to understand what they are. This is just a pipeline spill. This was in Arkansas, and just leakage of oil from the pipeline into groundwater and surface water contamination. So the impacts are real, and we have to figure out how we're going to handle them. Some data on accidents from trucks. We're on a downward trend. The accidents have been on a downward trend for combination trucks These include tanker trucks, except for the last few years they've been going up. The y-axis here is the number of crashes with injuries for every 100 million vehicle miles traveled over time. Accidents happen. Here's our shipping oil spill data over the last 20 or 35 years, 45 years. These are spills greater than 7 metric tons of oil. We've gotten very good in terms of shipping petroleum by marine vessels. Pipeline infrastructure is pretty complex in the U.S., and here's a map of all the different pipeline incidents where spills were involved between 2010 and 2015. So, again, these are non-zero incidents. And crude oil by rail. The left graph here chart shows the carloads of crude oil shipped by rail in the United States between 2005 and 2013. The middle shows the accidents, and you can see they mimic the more carloads you're going to be moving, the more accidents you're going to have, and then how much oil has spilled in terms of gallons. So all these modes are going to have problems. They're all going to have some level of accidents, and it's a question of managing the severity. And that's really important. So that's what we want to understand. In terms of impact assessments, this is a chart from Susan Christopherson and colleagues. She's at Cornell. I don't think Susan's here today. But in terms of thinking about the severity of an impact, someone mentioned earlier the types of issues. I think it was Mike from NOAA who was talking about this, and the different software packages that are needed. But thinking, what types of oil are we moving? What's the mode of transportation? The landscape, the vulnerability of the area. So Jerome's presentation about sensitivity, the climate, what season it is. All those things need to come together for us to understand the severity of these impacts. And of course, NOAA that showed us some modeling packages that they have that help with those assessments. Visualizing those risks, this is where maybe I'm complementing or possibly duplicating some of what Jerome just talked about. We do have a website that's shown here where you can do some overlays, and I can, at the risk of, this is what meeting facilitators hate.
It's working.
But you can go to this website. There's some information. It has the Great Lakes Basin on it. We kind of did it for demonstration purposes. And you can start to pick and choose different layers. So you want to put the port locations, you highlight the port locations. You can do a heat map similar to what we just saw. Now, you can also overlay, we have some things like zebra mussel sightings and all that stuff. You can put in, for example, pipelines, railroads. You can put in highways, here's roads. We also have vessel density similar to what we just heard. So you can put in the vessel density. And then you can start getting creative, right? And you can say, all right, I want to overlay this with my EPA Great Lakes areas of concern. I'll just click that on and off a little bit so you can kind of see where they come up. Maybe I'll just do one more and then we'll move on. I don't know, coastal wetlands. Right? Take a second to come up. There's some wetland areas, coastal wetland areas. So this is where I think we're complementing each other in terms of the last presentation and this one. It is about understanding these data and where there's overlap of the environmental sensitivities and the socioeconomic sensitivities vis-a-vis the transportation network that we're going to use to do things. In terms of modeling this, now I want to go one more step further. So we can do the overlays and see it. But now we got to think about how do we model the multimodal transport of any product, but we're talking about crude, from an origin to a destination so that we can minimize this risk. And this is where we've been spending a lot of our time. We've been building these models that connect different modes of transport and building optimization algorithms around those networks so we could map and analyze the movement of petroleum, say, from an origin to a destination in ways that minimize certain factors that we find are important. So we have a model called the GIFT model, the Geospatial Intermodal Freight Transport Model. It ties together the rail network, the highway network, and the waterway network we started to explore how we're going to connect the pipeline network to all this, and we haven't gotten there yet. And we connect it all through these intermodal terminals at the bottom left, so think of rail yards and ports and those kinds of things. Once we connect this, we have this great multimodal model where we can model a goods movement from an origin to a destination, and it will show transfer points where those goods get transferred. So we have a whole network of most of the world, frankly. I'm showing a picture of the U.S. and what that looks like. You think of this in terms of like a Google Maps, but instead of just looking at highway, it's connecting waterways and railways. And the other interesting feature about this modeling work is it's not just how do I get to my destination in the quickest amount of time or the shortest distance, but we populate the network with different attributes. We populate the network with different attributes, for example, environmental attributes, based on the types of engines you might be using in your ships or your trucks or your locomotives. So we can start to model, for example, least carbon routes, or least particulate matter routes, or least energy consumption routes. And this is just a quick example of going from North Dakota to Albany, and showing 3 different solutions to the problem. The blue one that's highlighted is based on a low CO2 route, and the product gets shipped on land and gets put on the Great Lakes and then comes back over to Albany. This is also publicly available. The website's down at the lower right, webgift.rit.edu. Again, we haven't made the pipeline connection. I'm showing in this slide the ArcGIS environment that we operate in. Aside from the website, we can do this on a desktop that shows the pipelines, but we have to build the connections in to make this whole complete. And we've looked at some different examples, and due to time, I'll move on. But the potential's there to do least cost, least time, least environmental. If we take Jerome's sensitivity indices, and populate the network with those numbers, we can start to do the risk minimization path from an origin to a destination in terms of moving crude. And that would be really cool. So we want to characterize risk, but importantly, I think this next step is to integrate the characterization into these kinds of models so we can actually make good decisions about where we put infrastructure, what modes do we invest in, what areas do we bypass, what's the trade-off when you bypass an area in terms of cost versus ensuring that you would have an easier time protecting the environment. And that's essentially what the steps are. So that's it for me, and I thank you and look forward to the questions afterwards.